Hi, I'm here with Dr. Peter Osborne from Sugarland, Texas. We're at the Truth About Cancer conference, but he's granted me a few minutes to do an interview. He's going to speak for us at our first event in Kansas City, Kansas, coming up the end of February. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, it is. I firmly believe it will be. So I heard you talk this morning, and it was fabulous. And I've read some of your book. I have to finish it. But tell a little bit about your book and what you talk about and what you do.
Yeah, so it's No Grain, No Pain. And the book is about grain as a food source, as a toxic food source for the masses. And most people, grew up with Tony the Tiger and the Lucky Charms rabbit and thinking that cereal has been this, tradition, ancient tradition, and it's not. Most people don't understand the way grain is grown. It's sprayed with toxins. It pulls metal out of the ground, so it contains heavy metals. They don't understand it actually contains molds and mycotoxins, which can be dangerous. And it contains gluten, and gluten, there's estimation anywhere between 6 and 40% of the population have gluten sensitivity. So if you are one of those and you're eating it, it can be really, really devastating, causing things from autoimmune disease to cancer.
Yeah. I mentioned to you how my husband cannot handle any type of grain whatsoever without pain. I figured out a few years ago that I have Hashimoto's. I did consult with my osteopath. It wasn't just out of the blue, but yeah. And now when I see other women in particular with their hair thinning, I have to restrain myself. I want to go up and say, there's a reason for that. But there's a reason for that is the same reason for a lot of other things. Like you spoke this morning a lot, especially about cancer, because that's what we're here learning about. But I believe in food as medicine, but food is either medicine or poison. And what you have found and are talking about is gluten and grains generally can just be a poison instead of a food source, and that's mind-boggling to most people. God gave us grain. God gave us bread. Bread is the staff of life. So why is it a poison now?
Yeah, I don't think it's that it's a poison now. We have the oldest known medical literature on celiac disease that predated, 2000 BC, predated Christ. And so, yes, God gave us a lot of things. He gave us uranium.
Yeah.
And he gave us things that are wonderfully healthy, and he gave us things that are wonderfully poisonous. And they all have a place and a purpose. And I think a lot of people don't understand one size doesn't fit all when it comes to diet. As much as people make reference biblically to the staff of life, the bread of life, I would argue a little bit differently. I mean, in Genesis, and I'm paraphrasing, so don't quote me, but when God kicked Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden, he said, "And in the fields you shall toil by the sweat of your brow, and you will have thorns and thistles," right? And so that, to me, I'm not a biblical scholar, although I am a doctor of pastoral science as well. That, to me, means that that part of the punishment was imperfect food.
I never thought about that. Yeah. That makes sense to me. And yet, though, taking the thought of bread further biblically, we have the Passover meal. I take the Lord's Supper every week, and it's bread, and I think it should be wine, or grape juice. We do grape juice, but those are two things that are really, really basic, and yet they're highly problematic. Well, the bread part is. But that was part of the Passover meal as well. Now, I know that in biblical times we were eating a totally different bread than what people are eating now. And I do teach people how to make and why to make sourdough bread from artisanal grains and organic and all of that. And yet still, I can't eat it. And my husband can't eat it. And as you alluded to, a lot of the population shouldn't be eating it and don't understand that they shouldn't be eating it. But have we done so much damage to our own bodies by damaging our food, perhaps, and everything else that we take in, that now we just can't handle even the most basic and healthiest, say einkorn, emmer, spelt?
Well, we've damaged our bodies, there's no doubt about that, through the massive use of medications, antibiotics, blood pressure medicines, antacids.
Yeah.
There's definitely been damage to the GI tract. Even pain medicines like non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, strip away the lining. Steroids strip away the mucosal lining. So there's definitely damage we've done. But then there's also the fact that even without that damage, without the time of that damage, many children get diagnosed still with celiac disease, right?
Yeah.
So again, we can do damage and we can accelerate how gluten can damage us through medicine, right? Through improper use of medicine and through improper self-care.
Yeah.
But we still have this gluten issue. This gluten issue has been around for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going anywhere. And I think a lot of people just don't get that. And I know a lot of people are really biblically, they want to partake. Mm-hmm. Right? They want to partake of the host, and that's devastating for some people to understand that. But I've actually had patients that the host puts them in the hospital. Mm. So I don't know how to explain that. I don't have an answer as to why that happens, other than my experience with working with people with autoimmune disease,
which is extensive.
Yeah,
and we don't always need to understand the why. What we do need to understand is how can we overcome? And I don't think it's by eating gluten-free bread and gluten-free cereal and gluten-free this or that. And you talked about that some this morning too. I was glad that you did. But that is the answer for a lot of people. They believe, but it's not the right answer, is it?
It's the same incorrect answer as using Splenda, or the same incorrect answer as as using, let's just say, so many people gravitate toward what they think is healthy, Diet Coke, instead of something else. So it's incorrect in that you can't get healthy eating food that isn't. And that really is the hallmark number one rule of nutrition. It's the unbreakable cardinal rule. It's breakable, but not without consequence. And so a person has to be willing to accept the consequence of that action if they're willing to eat in that manner. But processed food isn't good for us. It shouldn't be a newsflash, right? Yeah.
I know. It shouldn't be. And yet that's what most Americans' diet is. And we're all so busy. I'm busy. And I don't eat processed foods ever. I don't say that as a matter of pride, but I understand that I have to take care of myself. And that means I can't eat gluten. I don't even eat my own bread. I ate a slice last week. I ate 2 slices over 2 days, just my long fermented sourdough with organic artisanal grains. And a week later, my hair's starting to come out. Not horribly, like when I was eating it regularly. And I thought, okay, that tells me not at all. But eating well, eating healthy, and eating to heal doesn't have to be costly, difficult, and super time-consuming. But of course, it's not as easy as buying a box of cereal and a package of this and a can of that. It's definitely more time-consuming, a little more difficult, but it doesn't have to be that difficult. And what I do like to encourage people to think about is, if you think that making whole natural foods and eating everything that we should be eating, including foods that heal us instead of foods that harm us, if you think that's so difficult and time-consuming, how difficult is it to be sick? Yeah. How expensive is it to be sick? And that's really a core issue to me, and one that I want people to think a lot about. It doesn't have to be that difficult anyway to get well and to replace the foods that you're used to eating, whether they be gluten, French fries, Diet Cokes, or anything else. But it's easier, in my mind, to eat well, eat foods that God gave us, prepare them properly. I believe in eating fermented foods every day, and most people don't do that, but that's another God-given food and God-given process. That's just so much easier than being sick. So be looking for more information about our conference in Kansas City, Kansas. and be looking for more from Dr. Peter Osborne. I think we're going to schedule a webinar and invite people to not call in, but to send in questions. So we'll put up some information about that also. And your book again is No Grain, No Pain.
That's right. No grain, no pain.
Yep. And it's definitely worth the read. So especially if you have any kind of autoimmune or gluten sensitivities or suspect that you might, read the book. But I think everybody should read it anyway. And you also have a podcast, you were telling me, Monday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Yep, Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. You can show up and, ask your questions. I'm on there for an hour most Monday nights. So we stream both to Facebook and to YouTube. You can get on our list if you go to glutenfreesociety.org.
Okay.
And just sign up for our newsletter. And we send out an email to access the live Q&A.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be coming back later. Bye, guys.